The Pittsburgh Steelers signed outside linebacker Jannard Avery to a one-year deal to add to their depth on the edge. We'll talk about that, but first, we're going to talk about the cornerback situation because Ahkello Witherspoon made his signing official after a 2-week hiatus that made everyone wonder what was going on. And then he spoke with Steelers reporters, including myself, on Monday via Zoom. We're going to look at the cornerback room and wonder, are the Steelers done adding to that position, whether it's in free agency or in the NFL draft? Joining me to talk about it today is Tony Serino from the AFC North Talk podcast. It's going to be a fun Tony Tuesday. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find us on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and YouTube, and of course, Odyssey. But if you're watching us on YouTube, hit the like button on the video, hit the subscribe button to our YouTube channel to get all of our daily content, Monday through Friday, as well as our breaking news episodes. If you want to help us out even further, go on Apple Podcasts, rate us 5 stars with a positive comment, and add that positive comment along, and you'll get that special shout out at the end of the show. We thank you for making the Locked On Steelers podcast your first listen every day. Joining me today is our guy, our friend, our compadre, Tony Serino, because you know it's not just time for a Tuesday, it's time for a Tony Tuesday. What's up, Tony?
Is this like 3 weeks in a row we've actually had a Tony Tuesday on a Tuesday?
Stop getting a little too excited. It's only 2 weeks. Trust me, I count.
Okay. Well, we'll have 3 next week. Guaranteed.
We'll have 3. Woo!
There we go. Let's get it.
I'm excited. Now, like I said, the signing of Jannard Avery to the Steelers defense, important signing for depth. We'll get to that a little bit later. But I wanted to ask you, Tony, because the cornerback room is one that's been talked about a lot this season. And it's been talked about specifically because people wondered, would they keep Witherspoon or Hayden or both? It's clear they're keeping Witherspoon. Hayden's still a free agent right now. We'll see how that plays out. They signed Levi Wallace, further kind of considering they're not signing Joe Hayden to bring him back.
Yeah.
They still have Sutton, although this is a contract year for him. And they have James Pierre and Justin Layne and Arthur Maulet, who they brought back on a short deal. So now you have a room of 6 cornerbacks, but is that enough for what the Steelers are trying? If the Steelers are trying to be an elite defense this year, do they need a true CB1 in the room? And the question is, are they done adding to it? Because they could go in the NFL draft and get a guy. There's still Stephon Gilmore guys in free agency that they could sign to add to them as well. What do you see the outlook for this cornerback room moving forward?
It's an interesting question because, and Kevin Colbert said this at the owners, or wherever he was speaking. It was he said that the Steelers have starters at every position except safety, right? I know you talked safety yesterday. So basically saying like we're good, we're set at corner right now if we need to be, right? If they're not going to reach on anyone in the draft, it's not a dire need to go out and get a corner, but and you look at the room, and he's not wrong. I mean, Witherspoon we saw last year can be a quality outside corner. We know what Cam Sutton can do, both outside and inside. They bring Levi Wallace in not just for depth, but for someone who can start at times if necessary. And then you have Arthur Maulet, who played a bunch in the slot. And, Trey Norwood's still in that room. I mean, he's probably more of a safety-ish, but they used him in dime, used him at nickel in the slot a little bit as well. But I think, you talk about being an elite defense, and it's not just about this year. I mean, this is a team that's kind of building itself for the future now, adding guys like Miles Jack and extending TJ Watt. They'll likely extend Minka Fitzpatrick here. They want to be an elite defense for a while now. And I think in that way, you do need to potentially, if you have a chance in the draft to get someone who shouldn't otherwise be there. I think there are 3 names in this draft for me that you probably shouldn't have a chance at 20 to get, but if they're there, I think the Steelers are going to have a tough time. And I know they want to prioritize quarterback, that, they're probably going to prioritize safety and potentially even defensive line, but man, they're going to have a hard time passing up a cornerback at 20 if one of those 3 guys is there.
That's my thing is that, this is why I keep saying there's no guarantee they're picking quarterback or any position in particular this year. Because at 20, you're in a unique position where anybody can fall to you who might not be there. There's a lot of guys who project. Daniel Jeremiah of the NFL Network did a mock draft recently where Derek Stingley Jr. fell to them. In fact, we had a mock draft Monday on this very show yesterday that had Derek Stingley Jr. fall into them. I've done mock drafts where I've picked Andrew Booth Jr. as far as those guys. I think Ahmad Gardner is the one guy that everyone knows isn't going to fall. But, Booth and Stingley have had injury questions as far as performance-wise, and so their question is maybe they fall a little bit. I've seen some people taking Jordan Davis really early, taking 2 quarterbacks really early, and then taking like 3 offensive tackles, 5 edge rushers, 5 receivers, a linebacker, a center, and then all of a sudden you're sitting there like, well, wait a second, the other cornerbacks have to come into play at some point. This would be the chance for the Steelers to go get their man in the cornerback room. And there is a legitimate question as far as planning for the cornerbacks, because when you look at your CB situation, Ahkello Witherspoon, solid CB2. If you need him at CB1, okay, we'll see how he's going to have to like test that out.
Yeah.
Levi Wallace, solid CB2. You saw that with the Bills. He can fill in there. Cam Sutton can be in the slot, can also be CB2 if necessary. But there's no guy that rings CB1 very loudly, and that's why I think that the draft is the move here. I don't think that they're in on Stephon Gilmore. I think that's that train has sailed. He's also just a little bit older than what they're looking for. Again, per Kevin Colbert's comments at the owners' meetings about they want guys coming off their rookie contract. I really think that if one of those guys falls, that's when this team sprints to the podium and says, we're doing that.
Yeah, the only thing I worry about with a rookie, right, when we talk about kind of needing the CB1, I agree that this team in the future is going to need a CB1. I do wonder about the outlook of that in 2022 in particular. And really, when you add a rookie to the room, Tomlin talks about this all the time, right? The kind of continuity of the room and making sure that everybody's on the same page. We've seen in the past how much trouble this defense had, especially that year when they were starting Artie Burns as a rookie, they were starting Sean Davis as a rookie, and all the miscommunication that came with that. Now, I think this defense has gotten better. They have better leadership as far as players on the field at getting guys in the right spot. But it'll always be an open question when you add a rookie into that room, right? How many big plays is this player going to give up? Just because they're still getting used to the speed of the game, they're still getting used to their assignments. What's the coverage? Given certain looks or certain route combinations and that kind of thing. So, I look at this class, right? Let's talk about Stingley for a second. Stingley's a really interesting prospect. Now, he was fantastic his freshman year. The defensive coordinator there, Dave Aranda, said that he was the best defensive player he's ever coached. Now he's over at Baylor, where he's done a spectacular job there. So I think Dave Aranda, knows his way around defensive talent. But Stingley, he sat out a year for COVID. He's been injured. Kevin Colbert said after the COVID year that he was going to take into account guys who didn't play were going to get de-emphasized on their big board because it's like, what have you done for me lately? So I wonder how the Steelers are going to feel about Stingley, given that his best tape happened, 2 years ago? Was it 3 years ago now, I guess, with his freshman year? I wonder about that. And then, you wonder about, is Stingley, because he is such a, and not say he's a project, right? But you still haven't seen his best ball. Is he a day one starter? The other guy I think you and I both like a lot, though, is Andrew Booth.
Yeah.
Andrew Booth.
Woo!
I think Andrew Booth might be able to come in right away. Even if he doesn't come in right away and start, it's going to be such a good corner for this team for like 8 years. And it's the kind of corner, like I talked about, that the Steelers never get a chance to get, where I think he's the only real knock on Booth that I've heard is the injury concerns, which are an absolute concern. But when we talk about the physical talents that he brings to the table, the Steelers are always playing they're always playing catch up in this way because these guys are usually top 10 type prospects. So if he's there at 20, I'm with you. I think the Steelers have to kind of sprint to the board.
Yeah, it's just one of those situations. But let's step back for a sec before we switch to our next topic and say the Steelers don't get one at 20. You're looking at a situation where then if you're drafting a guy later, you're drafting a guy to compete to basically push off James Pierre or Justin Layne from the bottom of the depth chart. First of all, let's rest in peace to the James Pierre train. No. I thought you were going somewhere else with that. Not the James Pierre hype train, the Justin Layne train. We can maybe, but okay. We're not giving up. We're not. Oh, you're not giving up on James.
No,
Pierre.
I might have been a year early. Who
might have been a year? Okay.
Yeah, we're gonna. It's on the back burner. Everyone who was on the Pierre hype train, everyone still got their tickets. We're gonna see if we're gonna get riding again here in a couple months.
Tweet at us at Carter Critiques at Steeler Country. Are you still on the Justin Layne hype train?
Yes.
Or
the Layne train, I don't think has any. The Pierre train, yeah.
We'll do the Pierre train. Yes. Let us know. Are you still on the James Pierre hype train? I am very intrigued to see how many people are into that. But again, if you're drafting a guy in the later rounds, and you could still, Trent McDuffie's an interesting prospect who could be looked at some point. But there's other guys when you start doing. Roger McCreary of Auburn is a big name that a lot of people like. There's Andrew Booth's partner from Clemson, Mario Goodrich. A lot of people say he would be a good CB2 in a system. And again, the Steelers may be looking for longevity there because, again, Justin Layne was drafted with the hope of someday becoming a guy who could contribute to the secondary. He just never has been. But then there's a guy, a true sleeper in my opinion, in Damari Mathis out of Pitt. Had his pro day, and I was there for it. I took videos, I put them on Twitter. He had the best vertical leap out of any person that would have been in the combine this year, and he had the best broad jump that would have been of all the cornerbacks this year in the combine. So there's guys like that you could still add and say, hey, at worst, we have youth back at this position, and they're pushing the depth for a little bit there. I think that with this team and the lull that it's fell into with cornerbacks over the past, in days of, I guess we say old now, but it's really just 6 years ago. But when they were struggling there, it was a true hurt piece for the team. It was a true liability that cost them. I just think it would pay when you want to become an elite defense in today's NFL. You need to go get some young athletic cornerbacks to add to your room.
No, and I think Mathis and his athleticism certainly sticks out. And that's, I think, if the Steelers are going to take a corner in the kind of later rounds, right, 3, 4, 5, 6, one of those spots, I think they do. You do want to get a guy who at least fits an athletic profile that could be a CB1, because that's what this team is going to need going forward. So I'm with you. I think there's other. I like Tariq Woolen from UTSA, another just a super athlete. He may go a little higher though. I think he's been projected all the way up to maybe the 3rd round on some of the mocks that I've seen. But there's other guys, Alontae Taylor, I think he's from Tennessee, and I'm going to butcher this guy's name, but Caleb Evans from Missouri. There's other guys, right? Yeah. Just go. All you got to do, by the way, if you want to scout this, just go to Kenley Plott's relative athletic score, sort by corner, and just look at guys who have the best relative athletic scores. Because I think again, when you're looking for a corner, the first thing when you look at the all pros in the NFL, they all have great athletic profiles. I mean, the vast majority. Yes, there are the Richard Shermans of the world who didn't run well and
fewer and far between.
Exactly. They're the outliers, right? You want someone who's going to fit the kind of the 90% mold there. And so I think athlete has to be prioritized at the position. And you can certainly find some of those guys in this draft later on.
Certainly. We're going to take a break. When we come back, I want to talk about Genard Avery. But first, we got to talk about betonline.net, one of our great sponsors. That time again with college basketball's big day tournament, the March Madness. It's down to the Final Four. If you want to make money, this is the time to do it. This is the last weekend for all the college basketball hype. So go to betonline.net right now. You'll see all the latest odds, contests, player props, and don't forget, when you do that, betonline.net is the #1 source for all your sports betting and needs and info. But also, don't forget, BetOnline does more than just college basketball. It does pro basketball in the NBA. It does the NHL, does boxing, UFC, and Major League Baseball, as that's set to return very soon, as well as all live betting and your favorite Vegas casino games. So head to BetOnline right now, as it remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news information this season. When you check out their website today or on your mobile device, you'll learn about all the trends in the action at BetOnline, where the game starts. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm Chris Carter. He's Tony Serino. For a Tony Tuesday episode, we're switching to basically a news and notes segment, but also talking about the new signing and what's going to happen at edge rusher. We haven't had to talk about edge rusher much this offseason because everyone loves TJ Watt. He's the defensive player of the year. Alex Highsmith has played very well for the team. So the question has been, what do the Steelers want to do behind them? And that's where I think things come into play a little bit more for the team. But in doing that, they've signed Genard Avery, former Philadelphia Eagle and Cleveland Brown outside linebacker, a guy who looks to help out there in their 3-4 defense. And this fits the type of signings that Kevin Colbert's been doing lately. This guy's going to be 27 when the season starts. So he's in his physical, prime, as far as his age. He doesn't have a whole lot of sacks. He started 12 games last year for the Eagles, only had a sack. Had about 43 tackles for them for loss. His best season sack production wise was 2018 under Hugh Jackson with the Cleveland Browns when he had 4.5 sacks, and then Myles Garrett and Olivier Vernon and that new team kind of pushed him to the back a little bit. So he hasn't had that opportunity to shine. But again, they're not looking for him to shine. They're looking for him to fill a void at the backup, edge rusher position. Tony, how do you see his role playing out in this upcoming defense, and the importance of him needing to maybe be more than just a rotational guy, because we all know how injuries can stack up?
Exactly. I think that's the point right there. I know we're getting enamored this offseason where they got to get a quarterback, right? They got to replenish the wide receiver room, offensive line, defensive line, even linebacker. We just talked about corner and safety. Edge rusher, I know, feels secure at the top end. Of course, TJ Watt is the best one in the league, and Alex Highsmith, he's going to be a third-year player now. Who I thought he put some good tape out there at the end of last year. The Steelers had real problems with keeping those top two guys on the field. I mean, TJ, he played in 15 games last year, but he had injury concerns throughout. Highsmith dealt with his own injury concerns, and I think the Steelers did the right thing last year in saying, look, let's go out and let's get another guy who could start in certain situations for us, and that was Melvin Ingram. I mean, I think that what they were looking for out of the position, not just to get this, not the Anthony Chickillo, the special teamer who, he can rush the passer at times, but getting a real third edge rusher off the bench was a good thing for them. They just happened to get a guy who, wanted to start. He didn't want to be the third guy. He wanted to be the guy.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think getting Avery this year, I just think they've identified the right kind of player. You talked about, the youth that he has, right? Only 26, going to be 27 years of age. I liked him coming out of college because he's that kind of, the aggressive style. Maybe you got to back it off a little bit. You always want that kind of player, right? You want the player who you got to back it off. You don't have to teach him to turn it on. You want to teach him to back it off a little bit at times. So I think, the aggressiveness that he plays with, I think he's going to be a spot edge rusher at times. Look, we'll see if they bring back Charlton. They had Derek, what's his name? Tuska, who I think will be back again. The Steelers could certainly continue adding to this at this position at the back end of the draft. We saw them take Quincy Roche in the 6th round a year ago. He ended up on the Giants, by the way, and I think started plenty of games there. So, yeah, look, I'm not saying that Jordan Avery is a guaranteed lock to make the roster, but I like where the Steelers' head's at with the position, because get a guy who's got some experience to come off the bench. It's a position of need on this team.
It is. And going back to who Genard Avery has been, Avery's always been kind of overlooked because of his size. He's only 6 foot tall. He's 248. So he's undersized as an edge rusher. But in the Steelers 3-4 system, that might not be as much of a problem because you're playing out there. I mean, at 6'0", he's tall. He's taller than James Harrison was. Not that everybody's just going to be James Harrison, of course.
Do you remember the Steelers took Sutton Smith in the 4th round or whatever?
Yeah.
Remember Sutton Smith? He was like 5'11".
Yeah. Everyone was like, what is happening there? Yeah. Right. But here's the thing. And going back to the RAS system from Kenny Platt, from using the relative athletic score, when Avery came out, he was a 9.29.
Yeah,
which is like elite. So it's a system from 0 to 10, and if you're in the top 9, like a percent of you're scoring in the 9s, you're like one of the best athletic explosive wise. Like he has a really good vertical jump, a good broad jump. Short shuttle was good, but his 3-cone drill was great. And he ran a 4.59 in the 40, showed really good explosiveness. So again, you look at those numbers and you're saying, okay, you're adding an athlete out there. And this is a guy who, probably has a lesser chance of getting tired, and he can move around. And we also know how the Steelers defense likes to move off, those edge rushing linebackers around a little bit. And if Avery can kind of be able to show lateral movement and kind of work out in space, that's another tool that can be used in the Steelers defense. We'll see if Terrell Austin, incorporates that with his new defense. But again, I think this is an interesting add here. But I still think that they need to add one more guy that's going to actually help on the edge, because they don't want to be shorthanded when it comes to backing up TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith. I think as a 1-2 punch, they could be the best 1-2 punch at edge rusher in the NFL if things work out the right way this year. But they need to be able to get these guys off the field, not just with, the defense getting stops on third downs, but with guys being able to come in, provide good reps, and not hurt the team in doing so. So I think even with Genard Avery, another signing has to be coming, or like a surprise, like higher draft pick than we thought would go at edge rusher.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I do think that this team needs to prioritize in the long term the third spot there. What'd you think about Taco at the end of last year? I thought he put some.
I thought he did fine. I mean, if they could get him back, great. Like sign him up.
I would love to see that. Yeah, because, and again, Tomlin always talks about that continuity, right? I mean, he's already been in the system. He knows what it is. I know it's going to, the DC has changed, but the system itself is not going to change drastically. So yeah, I'd love to see them bring Taco back in. Just worry about, if you're expecting, a fifth or sixth round edge rusher to come in and be a real contributor
and be what Highsmith was, like
right.
that doesn't happen too often.
It's tough. Yeah. Cause Highsmith was a third round pick. And they were drafting him not to be a third guy. They were drafting him to take over for Bud Dupree.
Right.
Because that was the assumption that they weren't going to be able to bring him back. So, you're not likely not going to take the third edge rusher in the third round. You're going to wait until day 3. And then when you're getting a day 3 type player, that player maybe doesn't start right or maybe doesn't play right away or is a special teamer first. That's where I think Taco maybe fits better.
Absolutely. And also another thing to also take into account over the last 2 years, Avery's also played at least a quarter of the Eagles' special team snaps. So that's another factor in there too. With that athleticism, why not?
Right.
Like have him be a stronger body who could fly around the field a little bit and make some changes there. So there you have it. That's the addition of Jannard Avery. There's a lot more going on there, but we'll talk about more of the Steelers edge rushers in a little bit. But first, we got to talk to you guys about our great sponsors at rockauto.com. Rockauto, of course, is the place where you can save money when you're looking for a new part for your car or truck. Why choose to spend 30%, 50%, or even 100% more for some of the same parts from a chain store or a car dealership when you can get them at rockauto.com? For example, if you need a Honda Odyssey fuel pump, that's $353 when you go to the chain store. But if you go to rockauto.com, it's $216, saving you a lot of money. Rockauto is a family-owned business serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. Rockauto's prices are reliably low for every customer, and they have everything that you could need from brake parts to tail lamps to motor oil and even new carpet. Go explore their easy-to-use website today to find the solution to your auto part needs. Go to rockauto.com right now, and you'll see all the parts available for your car or truck. Be sure to write Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box so that they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliable low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. Visit rockauto.com today. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm Chris Carter. He's Tony Serino. Tony, you love to talk quarterback, so I got to let you talk some quarterback right now. Now, one of the other big names, maybe the last big name of this draft class, Sam Howell, just had his pro day with North Carolina. Now, Kevin Colbert and Matt Canada were on hand to see that. Of course, Mike Tomlin still at the NFL owners meetings talking about rule changes. We'll get to that later in the week. But wanted to get your perspective just on this pro day situation because they've now, when we last talked to you, they had seen Kenny Pickett on Monday.
Mm-hmm.
They had seen Malik Willis and he was throwing the ball and everyone was enjoying that. But now they've seen Desmond Ridder and they've talked to Matt Corral, even though he's still kind of working his way back from his injury and all that. And now with the team going to visit Howell, it's clear it's like, hey, we're doing this. But is this a situation where, the Steelers have basically said, we don't care what you think of or what you think about who we're picking. We're going to go to all the pro days. But I thought it was really interesting. Ian Rappaport called Mike Tomlin a quote unquote pro day king this week, talking about how he loves visiting them. He loves playing, the social game of getting to know players. Is this a guarantee the Steelers are just going to take a quarterback, with their first pick or, their second round pick to bring this year? Or is this, again, just them doing their due diligence and we end up seeing them wait till later to just snag a quarterback that just adds to the arms in their room for training camp?
I wouldn't call it a guarantee, but I am a big believer in the, follow Tomlin and Colbert if you want to know who the Steelers are going to take in the first round. Right? Look, it's not like they've only seen quarterbacks. They've seen other players. They could easily take one of the defenders from Georgia or the Andrew Booth from Clemson. There's plenty of guys that they've seen that would fit the bill in the first round. But, boy, it does. Quarterback seems like, they're thinking real hard about it. Here's what makes me angry, Chris, right? Because I say follow Tomlin and Colbert. And now Tomlin and Colbert do a great job of telling us kind of generally speaking what kind of positions are they interested in. But then they give us little hints along the way of who they're not interested in, right? You go back to last year. Najee Harris, Travis Etienne. We all knew it was going to be Najee Harris, but everybody kind of entertained the idea of like, well, maybe it could be ETN, I guess. Could be. But there was a third guy in there that I actually liked a lot, Javonta Williams from North Carolina. But we knew they weren't going to go to Javonta Williams because they didn't go to that pro day. I mean, they just, Tomlin and Colbert didn't go to North Carolina's pro day. Maybe they didn't consider him on the level of, and by the way, Michael Carter, another, top running back in last year's class. They didn't, he was also in North Carolina. They didn't go to that pro day this year. So what I was hopeful about in this week is that maybe they would skip one or two just so we could eliminate, like, all right, well, they're not going to, they're not at Corral's pro day. They won't go draft him. No, Mike Tomlin and Kevin Colbert have gone to every single one. So is this just a due diligence thing of, look, we're in the market for a quarterback and you can't be too careful when it comes to quarterback because what's the number? Like 30% hit rate on quarterbacks in the first round. Yeah. And it is like super low. Just the idea of drafting one means you're more than likely going to you're going to miss. So yeah, do as much due diligence as you can. But look, I don't think it's a guarantee. Here's what I'm coming around. I think the Steelers, if it's not Willis, I don't think it's going to be Pickett either because I think both those guys are going to go early. And I think the Steelers, what was the report? That they would trade to 10? That makes sense. I think that they would trade to 10, but I don't know if they would go higher than 10. And I don't think either guy lasts to 10. So at 20, do they take Corral or Howell or Ritter at 20? Seems a little high, right? Especially if someone like Booth's still on the board. So you take Booth and then you trade back into the first round at the end because you still want that fifth-year option, and you get your Ritter or your Howell or Corral or whoever it's going to be. The back end, I mean, assuming that they really do like all five quarterbacks in this class, I'm kind of coming around to that idea, right? It's still the idea that they trade up to get a quarterback, but don't trade from 20 to 5. Trade from, whatever they're picking, 42 or 52 up to 30 and still get your guy and get the fifth-year option.
I like that idea because also the fifth-year option is a point of control to have it in that conversation. I'm concerned about, the possibility of maybe trying too hard to get that quarterback in this draft class. And then you end up passing on, the opportunity to get like a Travis Jones and fill out your defensive line group. If you get that, because again, there's a lot of talent in this draft. That's great for the second round. It's why I did a whole show on Friday about trading back in the NFL draft. So, I think that there's a lot of opportunity to be had there, that if you can maximize your picks in that part of this draft, you'll come away with a lot of really good players, maybe a star and two depth players, or a star and two really good role players for your starting offense or defense. That's where I'm at there. And that's why I'm not too sold on just getting a quarterback in this draft class to say that you got a quarterback.
Right.
But like you said, it's all about where you get your guy, because Ritter at 20, a little rich for my blood. Ritter at 30, like trading back up into the first round. Okay, I understand what you're doing there.
Yeah, especially if the draft capital that you're giving up to get him is, and I don't know if they can make this work, but let's say it was just 2 seconds, right? They trade away this year's second and next year's second to get back into the first round. I don't know if that works in the chart or whatever, but let's just say it did. That's, that would be good value because you're essentially getting him for a little more than a second round pick. And you're not giving up, like you said, the opportunity cost of taking what will be a very good player likely at 20 at again, a real position of need. The only way for me, at quarterback this year, I'm with you. I don't think they should force it. I don't like this idea that goes around that Kevin Colbert wants the team to have a future at quarterback before he retires. I don't think you don't need to set an artificial benchmark like that. Right. What you need to find, the Steelers need to find, is their guy, whoever that is, right? Whoever's the guy that they think this is the guy that can lead us for the next 15 years, right? The next Ben Roethlisberger. That's why I'm not opposed. If this team wants to go absolutely crazy and trade up to 5 and take Malik Willis, I'm not going to be upset by that, because at least if you're going to gamble on a quarterback, take the guy that you love, not the guy that you like. Take the guy that you love. And we know the Steelers love Malik Willis in this class. Yeah. So if that's their guy, fine, do whatever you have to do to get there. But the idea to just sit back in 20 and go, well, I guess Corral's here and we do need a quarterback, so let's just do it. I'm not buying into that part of this. That scares me a little bit.
No, it's the same. I think that there's too much talent, because again, at 20, imagine passing up on your CB1 star for the future for a quarterback who's just basically another Mitch Trubisky / Mason Rudolph / Baker Mayfield, just a guy that does that's solid. I know. I just dissed your boy Mitch.
You did. You put him in the same range as Mason. We're gonna remember.
Hey, you saw
Tony
Mason.
will remember that.
Mason said he's not gonna give up the starting job like that.
Good luck. Good luck.
But
see if Mason makes the roster.
No, that's harsh.
Yeah, I know, right?
He'll make the roster. Come on, that's low.
Do you think? Hold on. Does he make the roster in a world where they take Malik Willis?
Oh, if they take Malik Willis, he might push it. He might get traded. I don't think he'll be cut. I think he would be, if at worst, he'd be traded somewhere at that point. But no, I think that because he's their only holdover of a guy who's played on the roster with snaps. So like, say Mitch Trubisky doesn't work out and your rookie quarterback you don't feel is ready. Mason knows the system. He knows the guys. He can at least be like, all right, let's go out here and let's not mess this game up for the rest of the team. I know it doesn't sound great. I know you're not enticed by that.
It's like, imagine a world where it's October, okay? Trubisky's a bust, fine. But then but Mike Tomlin's, you're going to deny us to watch Malik Willis for a season so I can watch another 8 games of Mason Rudolph? I got to find Formula One, guys. It's a great season, by the way. Tune in.
Yeah, I feel you on that. I still think it's very possible the Steelers draft a quarterback, but again, I really want to see my only problem with your proposed trade here, going 2 second rounders, one this year, one next year, is that say next year is the year that they really want to go get that quarterback of the future, right?
Yeah.
You need all the picks next year to do that because you need to not only be able to trade up, but also trade up and then still have picks that you can use to add to the roster then. So,
but you're punting on 2023. If you trade for a quarterback this year, you're
giving up on
2023.
But look at next year's class. It's so
I know.
It's such a higher pedigree.
But if Colbert has this idea that I'm not waiting for 23, I'm getting one in 22 because this class is deep, then not good. Maybe they do. Maybe they punt on 23 and just go get a guy this year and not the guy.
Yeah, maybe. That's certainly a possibility. I think it would be a bit hasty of a move in my opinion, unless they know something about some quarterback in this draft class and it's the greatest gamble of all time. But again, why would the Steelers do that? They've been a team that's been about playing an even keel for so long, an organization that's been making smart, calculated moves and not taking too many risky moves over the years to build their roster.
And one other thing we need to mention here is they don't need to go out and just like go panic mode for a quarterback because they already have one Mitchell Trubisky in the room, future Hall of Famer already there, just in waiting, Hall of Famer in waiting. Look what Matt Nagy did. Look what he's done. Look what he's done to Justin Fields. Okay, and he ruined Mitch, and all Mike Tomlin has to do is chisel that diamond out. I mean, and look, Matt Nagy, he screwed it up, but. You just got to, Tomlin's got to get in there and just do your work, Tomlin. Just do your work. We'll be fine.
You see my face right now?
It's a diamond in the rough. That's what they got. That's what they got, Mitch. That's why they waited 55 minutes into free agency to sign their boy.
And they paid him $7 million a year to do it.
A little underpaid. I would have paid him more, but
I would have paid him more. This is why you aren't the GM. Or Omar Khan. Anyways, Tony, it's been a great, fun show. Thanks so much for joining us here in the Locked On Steelers podcast. You're always a bunch of fun. Let people know they can find you, follow you, and get more of your work.
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Steeler Country, and you can find me on YouTube. It's a show called AFC North Talk. It's a roundtable show all about the AFC North. So give that a watch. We are coming back on Friday of this week to talk more about free agency and start previewing the draft.
Absolutely. Do check them out. AFC North Talk is a fun show where Tony lets all the AFC North hosts have it when it's time to do so. You can follow me, Chris Carter, on Twitter and Instagram at Carter Critiques. You can find this show, Locked On Steelers, on all podcast feed, but including Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Odyssey, and YouTube. If you're watching this video on YouTube, hit the like button on this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to our YouTube channel to get all of our daily content as well as our breaking news content when that's available. And if you want to help us out even more, give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts with a positive comment. When you do both at the same time, you get a special shout out at the end of the show. Thanks again for checking us out. Thanks again to Tony for today's show. We're back tomorrow with a Wes Wednesday. Wes Euler joining the Locked On Steelers podcast. It'll be a fun one. We'll see you then.